All right, everybody, let's get started here. Thank you so much for joining today's webinar, Tackling China, the world's most lucrative e-commerce market. My name is John LeBaron. I am the Chief Revenue Officer here at Pattern, and we are super excited to be joined today by Chris Vincent, Pattern's Chief International Officer, Joanna Perry, who is our Head of Global Marketing, and Desiree Wong, who is a Senior Consultant on the international business and focuses on China in a big way. So really excited for everyone to join us today and go through a bunch of stuff. We have a lot of stuff to cover today and really excited to move through it. As a quick reminder, the session is being recorded and will be sent to registrants and attendees following our presentation today. We do encourage you guys to ask questions or make comments through the Q&A window here in the Zoom. So feel free to submit your questions and I'll get to them as we go along. I'll try to monitor and scan them. So for those that are not familiar with Pattern, we are a top e-commerce marketplace manager and provider. We actually buy inventory from the brands with whom we work. We are a top seller on Amazon, but we also represent brands on eBay, on Walmart.com, on Mercado Libre, on all the international Amazon sites, and many of the sites in China as well. We have offices in Australia, and we'll get actually to that in just a second. So again, just to give you a sense of the global presence of our business and the marketplaces on which we do operate, I thought I'd just turn it over to Chris really quickly and have him walk through some of the offices. He manages basically everything outside of the Americas for us, and those offices continue to grow. So Chris, why don't you just give us a quick overview of the offices that we manage today and maybe a sneak peek into some of the offices that will be opening imminently.
Thanks, John. Yeah, for sure. Hi, everybody. So yes, hi, I'm Chris, based in the UK. That's where we run our international business out of. We have operations across Europe. So we run our European operations from London, but we are in the process of opening an office up in Munich. We're actually heading out there next week to select some office space. We've got someone very senior from Amazon joining us. We also have operations and offices in the UAE, and that covers the MENA region, which is the Middle East and North Africa, and includes India. We have operations across China. So we have one office in Shanghai, one office in Guangzhou, which really concentrate on the China market, but we also have an office in Hong Kong. And Hong Kong is really more of a Southeast Asia play, including Japan. So we run that region out of that office. And of course, we've got a couple of operations in Australia, one in Sydney and Melbourne. And for most of the locations that we have globally, we have logistics set up with it because of the kind of function that we do and the fact that we work and purchase the products for brands. That's a necessity. Now, in some markets, that's a third-party logistics. And in the case of a place like China, because of the delivery demands, we would need probably 20 or 25 warehouses to cover the one-day delivery requirements there. So we use a third-party network, and it really depends on the type of products that you have. Depends on which network we utilize there. But we've been doing business in China actively as a trade partner for quite a few years now, and I've been going back and forth to China for probably almost 20 years. So we think we know the market pretty well, and of course we'll talk about that in a bit more detail later. Some of the brands that we work with on a global basis, I think we've probably got more than 250 brands that we have dealt with over the years. And some of those we've worked with on a consultative basis. So we've helped them figure out how to go international, work international. Some of these brands we've been lucky enough to work with in a capacity where we purchase the stock. A couple of ones that are probably worthwhile calling out here for China is Skechers, Kong, Thorn, and Corvin are 4 brands that are on that list there that we actively work with in China. But of course, we have a number of brands that we work with globally, and we have some really long-standing relationships globally that we continue to have through to today.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Chris. And yeah, just a quick reminder to everyone as we go throughout this, feel free to ask questions through the Q&A window, and I'll try to get to them as we go along. I think it's interesting as we look across the expansion efforts and look at this GMV really for e-commerce, not necessarily even marketplaces across all these different countries. I think it highlights the importance of this global play, specifically when you look at China, which we'll be going deep on today. I mean, really almost 4 times the size of the US. If you look at the total GMV for Amazon worldwide, right? At least, I guess these are probably 2018 numbers, but 270 some odd $1 billion of GMV. And I think that's indicative when you look at the kind of second place player, JD.com, doing $250 billion. I mean, I really think the top two players in China will eclipse all of Amazon Global in the next several years. So it's pretty exciting to take a look. It also gives you a sense of even some of these big markets that you look at, like India, where e-commerce is just growing so fast. It still really is eclipsed by countries like even Germany or Canada, right? So, and certainly Japan. So I think it's interesting. We have a lot of pressure to take many of these brands that we work with global, but the most exciting opportunity traditionally has been in Western Europe and China for these brands. So super excited to kind of get into those today and walk through what the opportunity truly is here. So I thought I would take a moment and let's just set the stage for a second and walk through what we think, the state of this Chinese market is. And, I'm sure we have attendees on the call today that are already in China, some that are considering that play, somewhere it might be a little bit, out. So Chris, you mentioned earlier that you've spent a lot of your career in China, working in China, certainly here at Pattern of a reasonable large presence and expanding presence there. Tell us a little bit about what you've learned, I guess, over the years of what it means for especially Western brands to go into China and some things you've seen done really well maybe, and some things that are kind of common pitfalls.
Yeah, that's great question, John. So I think the first and foremost thing that is a major difference, especially when we start talking about North American brands or European brands going into China, is this concept of face. And face is a kind of a social thing. It's almost like dignity and prestige wrapped up into one thing. And so face really can stop people from giving you an honest answer about things if they think that it will diminish their face or make them lose face. And so this concept is really quite foreign, I would imagine, to a lot of us, especially when you're used to working in a place like the US where your word is your bond, and people are, a lot of deals are done by handshake and trust through relationships. And so this kind of can cause a lot of issues for North American businesses, but again, it's the same for Europeans. It's a very different way of thinking. So I think that's the first thing that you need to understand. And that doesn't mean that it's not possible to work there, but it's just something that you've got to understand, that the culture is different and they might have a different paradigm when they're dealing with you. So always question, always ask, and make sure that you have proof and an understanding of what's going on there in detail firsthand. I think the other thing that's really important about the market, and we're all growing towards this, but it is a mobile first economy. The consumers there have really grown up on mobiles, desktop computers. I mean, China really passed the age of desktop computers. It wasn't really widely available. So, and telco and telecoms wasn't as advanced as it was in other places. But of course, China's caught up really fast, but much similar to the rest of Asia. It's a digital first, a mobile first economy. And that's really the way that they work and operate. So when you go over there, don't be too obsessed about how things look on a desktop, but think about mobile first. I think the other key thing is that it's a lot cheaper to do business from a logistics point of view. So when we talk about, one-day delivery, which I mentioned earlier, this is a huge thing in China. The consumers want things fast. It's a big country, very similar again to the US in terms of size, but this is expected. So it doesn't matter if you're in the top northwestern corner or the southeastern corner of China, they want to get it fast. And so in order to compete, you need to be able to think about that. And the brands and the businesses that you work with, need to be able to service that as well. And I think probably the other key point of difference for people used to working with Amazon, especially in the US, is that really the 1P business where Amazon buys the stock really doesn't exist in Tmall or JD. They have a very small portion of their business that's in supermarkets that they will acquire the stock on behalf. They're doing all similar stuff around offline retail, trying to work with offline retail, stores and that kind of thing to get pickup. And Amazon's doing some of this stuff in a lot of markets as well. But the concept of Tmall buying your stock and basically selling it doesn't exist. It's all third party, or what we call trade partners or TPs in China that service that. And I think the key thing about that is it creates a different dynamic in the market. And I think with that as well, one of the other things that we probably will dive into a little bit later on, but is worth mentioning here, is that, geez, customer service is just such an important channel in that market. I think the stats will vary by product set, but you could say that, 80 to 95% of all transactions for your brand and your product will touch customer service in some way, shape, or form. So that might be pre-sales, that might be post-sales, that might be during the sale process. And the reason for this is the whole idea, this concept of actually China being a communist country. People don't believe a lot of what's out there in the media and what's happening. So they really want to verify for themselves if the product is real, if what they've heard is true. So they want to touch and interact with people. So a well-trained customer service function is worth its weight in gold in China. And what I've just found with a lot of traditional TPs is, there's a lot of robotic answering services that, route you through to different questions. And it can be a very low cost model. That doesn't really work for Chinese consumers, the same as it wouldn't work for us in the West. So I think those are some of the key concepts that I would call out to be aware of at a top level.
Yeah, awesome. Well, Desiree, I want to come over to you in just a second, but I knew we've had a couple of questions kind of come through. So Chris, maybe you and I can tag team on this first one. The person says, what is the U.S. sales volume? What kind of U.S. sales volume would a brand need for Pattern to be a good fit? I can talk it on from the U.S. perspective. And again, just for people unfamiliar with our model, we buy and sell the product, but then we add a whole host of managed services really on top of that at no cost to the brand. We buy at the margin and include in the pricing that we buy your product for, include everything from SEO to advertising to customer service to detail page management, listing management, forecasting, all of the other stuff. So it's a very kind of turnkey model that works quite well for the 70 plus brands that we work with in the US. So generally we're looking for brands that are doing more than $10 million a year total revenue. Oftentimes on a marketplace on eBay or Walmart.com or Amazon, we're trying to look for at least probably $2 million a year in revenue to kind of make it worth our while, I guess, to really dive in. We don't do a ton of launching of brand new brands. There are some corner cases, obviously, but that gives us a sense. Maybe Chris, even though the question wasn't asked, I think it's probably worth mentioning on this call. What kind of brands do you like taking over? I know we get a lot of requests to launch brands over in China as well, and we do that. What brands tend to experience the best success, I think, from a standing start that you've seen and worked with?
Yeah, sure. So I think we're fairly aligned with how we do business in the US. I think brands that are under kind of $2 million US in China is kind of tough for us to take on. That doesn't mean, again, that we don't. And we have done quite a few brands that have been quite a bit smaller than that. I think the short answer is it depends, but I think the longer answer is that, what's the tactic or what's the plan for China? We may find brands that are doing $500,000, but it's just being run so badly that we think we can, double, quadruple, exponentially grow the sales. And we've done that with some brands we've taken over. I think if you're not in China, the other metric, and remember the difference between Amazon and Tmall and JD is we can get a lot more information from the back end of the system. So if you want to know what your competitors are doing in China, we can probably get that information. If they're doing a decent amount of sales over there, it'll turn up on the reports. But we can really drill into the detail of what's going on in China and see what kind of passive activity is going. In a lot of cases, brands that aren't actively trading in the market do have some awareness because we have this concept of what's called Daigaos, which are basically group shoppers that buy the product in the West and then sell it to individuals in China and Asia. But these Daigaos find products that really work in places like America. And then what they do is they buy it in bulk. That might buy it off one of your distributors or from you guys directly. They then import it into China or into Asia somewhere and then use that vehicle as a way to, get into their community and their group to be able to sell that product on. So in some cases, we found that brands that are actually not even aware that they have a business in China actually do have quite a bit of awareness in the market. And that allows us to maybe take a view that if there was zero awareness, we could probably launch a lot easier. But again, probably to qualify this, anyone can launch in China. The idea of how much money you have to spend in marketing and the kind of tactics that you have to use and the time it will take. sometimes means it's prohibitive without that kind of awareness already in place.
Yeah, awesome. So, Ms. Desiree, you've obviously spent a ton of time in China. You're in London now, but tell us a little bit about, same sort of thing, anything that Chris might have left off that you thought is helpful to kind of pick up here as brands evaluate either entry into market or optimization of their business in China.
Yeah, sure. Hi, everyone. Desiree here. So Chris mentioned about the concept of phase, which I'd like to elaborate a little bit more on how it actually not only affects how you're going to operate in China, but also how it would help some brands, particular brands, to grow in the market. Because of the concept of phase, actually, the consumers in China, they equivalent the brands that they're using to their social status. That's why in the previous years, we can see the huge growing business from the affordable luxury brands. So some Chinese consumers, they couldn't really afford the high luxury brands, but affordable luxury brands are those brands that they can talk about with their social gatherings or with their friends and family, which can increase their social status. And also, there's one point I'd like to highlight, especially for the e-commerce environment, because the Chinese consumers, they don't have many trust on the information of a brand. They need tons of information and videos, 360 images of the products. That's why for each single product, you'll need even more than the A+ content on the Amazon US to illustrate what the benefits of the products are, and also how it would look like if they really receive the products, so they won't have any surprise. And also because of the trust, or some brands, they fail to present this kind of information before the consumers actually order the products, the return rates in China could be as high as 70%, especially for apparel brands, because they couldn't they might have different feelings when they actually touch the products. The textiles or the sizes are so different.
Yeah, that's really helpful to think through. We did have another question come through, which Desiree, I think I'll pass over to you. It says, I heard that Tmall did not do well with logistics post-pandemic and that JD was better at this. Is that your experience? So I don't know if you want to speak a little bit to either our personal experience or just the sentiment in the market around JD.com's logistics infrastructure versus that of Tmall, especially in a post kind of pandemic environment or current pandemic even.
Yeah, sure. So actually for the logistics side provided by Tmall and JD, I would say JD has some privileged logistics service by the platform, like the white glove delivery service, etc. But during the pandemics in China, both platforms react quite fast, and also the merchants on both platforms, they react really fast because they got the information from the Tmall owned logistics service called Tmall. So they could immediately announce what areas or what regions would have a suspended service on logistics. I couldn't say that we can see the difference between Tmall and JD during the pandemic environment on the logistics service, but both of them want to resume the delivery and logistics service as fast as possible.
So John, just on that point, to what Desiree said, I think the difference is a bit noticeable from JD to Tmall because of the size of the business. So Tmall is just a giant business, and JD is a portion of that size. So you can see here in this slide, and I won't take the ammo away from you guys because I know you're going to talk about it, but I think that's the size matters here. And I think because Tmall and Alibaba is such a big beast, it's more noticeable when you have disruptive events, just like we would have seen in the US with some of the things happening around Amazon. But I think the key thing to say is that, during the pandemic, basically the China market was shut down completely, and these were the only guys operating. So much like we're seeing in the early stages of the pandemic in the West, I think we saw the same kind of characteristics in China, but maybe even more severe than, some of the shutdowns we've seen in the West.
Yeah, it's pretty fascinating. I think, Chris, you spoke to this a little bit earlier, but I remember chatting, maybe you and I were in the same room chatting with a customer that had a fairly large business in China, and he was living in China, he's living in Shanghai, and he said, yeah, it's just unbelievable. And the infrastructure there, and we think, you know, it was amazing when Amazon moved from 2-day to 1-day. It's like blew people's minds. Well, in many parts of China, it's an hour delivery. I think JD has six-hour delivery across like 95% of China right now. So there are people waking up ordering eggs online for breakfast, right? And people are running them up. It's like DoorDash on steroids, right? So it's pretty impressive, the infrastructure that they've built out there, and the way it's quality of life. And I think, you know, there's a lot of things today that I know so many people come to us and ask about shipping everything from, like, you know, fresh ham to groceries. And I'm just like, I don't think we're there yet from an infrastructure standpoint, but we will be. We'll catch up to China at some point here in the West, but they're already there. I mean, you can basically order whatever you want. So we spent a fair amount of time on Tmall, JD.com. I mean, Desiree, why don't you walk us through some of the other big marketplaces there? And again, we try to show some of the size here to give some perspective.
Yeah, sure. So actually, Alibaba obviously dominates the China e-commerce market. Alibaba includes at least three platforms here, including Tmall, Tmall Global, and Taobao. So Taobao is a C2C e-commerce market, and for Tmall Global, it is a cross-border e-commerce platform by Alibaba. And JD, Pinduoduo, WeChat, these platforms, they really want to capture some of the e-commerce shares in China. That's why, like Pinduoduo, they find their own way to capture the e-commerce market. Most of the products or most of the brands there selling on Pinduoduo, they target for tier 3 and tier 4 cities. And for WeChat, they target for even older customers, like over 55 years old customers. All of them are using WeChat for their day-to-day use, like chatting with family, social media, calling cabs, etc. So each of these platforms, they find their ways to capture certain amount of market share on e-commerce, even though Alibaba is so big in the market. And like Little Red Book, they target for younger, affluent females customers, talking about mainly on the beauty and fashion side. And interestingly, I know you guys must be very familiar with TikTok, which is the really hit social media. There's also, there's actually a Chinese version of TikTok, which is called Douyin. So Douyin is similar to TikTok. You can watch a lot of interesting short videos, but Douyin is also adding some e-commerce elements on this app. Now, some brands like Skechers that we are partnering with, they also have several Douyin e-commerce sites on the platform. So when the customers, when the users watch the videos, they don't know that they are actually being seeded with the e-commerce elements, so they can purchase within the same app immediately. So this is a really interesting news or some what's happening in China, that you can always see new platform every day.
Yeah, pretty impressive. And again, just to give context, I mean, WeChat at 53 billion is double the size, probably. I haven't looked at the latest numbers, but I know at least the 2018 GMV for Walmart, I mean, that's double the size, right? eBay, I think, was 94 billion last time I checked. So, you know, Pinduoduo already bigger, right? So these marketplaces, these opportunities, you know, it's no wonder 4x the size of the US. It's just really staggering. So yeah, fantastic. Well, let's keep moving along here. And again, if you guys have questions that you want to ask, feel free to put those in the Q&A, and I'll try to get to them. So maybe we can just, you know, walk through this and introduce one of our other panelists here as well. Joanna, why don't you talk to us a little bit about, you know, the growth trajectory on some of these marketplaces, and let's start with Tmall here and just walk us through. I think it's important to notice, you look at these quarters, this is not the calendar year, it's fiscal. So really, I mean, they just barely wrapped up fiscal year 20. But why don't you walk us through this?
Sure, yeah. So hi everybody. I think what's really important to note from these figures is that Tmall, through its last fiscal year, which ended in March this year, has managed to continue growing. So that last quarter, it still achieved 10% growth through the worst of the pandemic and lockdown in the country. And then if you look back kind of earlier into its fiscal year, so 11/11, even though we've seen some plateauing effects because it's done so well in previous years that it's hard to keep maintaining growth around Singles Day, still achieved 24% growth. And then if you look back further, so to kind of the quarter that would have been a year ago, that had 618 Festival in it, which is actually JD.com's main promotional event, but which Tmall has adopted, it achieved 34% year-on-year growth then. So despite the fact that Tmall is the dominant player in the market, it's still achieving staggering growth figures, kind of ahead of the overall growth in consumer spending in China. And I think if we move on to the next slide, John, so I'll kind of explain a little bit more about why that's important for brands in the US. So if you're not already selling on Tmall and you're considering it as a platform, 2 or 3 years ago, Tmall really would have accepted any brand that was prepared to sell on the platform. And now it's become much more picky about who it will allow to join. And there's a few reasons for that. So it needs to keep its growth up, and it's not going to do that just by accepting more brands that do exactly the same thing as brands already selling on the platform. So if it's a new brand to Tmall now, you really need to help it do these 3 things, which is recruit new customers to its marketplace. We can see on the earlier slides that it's up against some fierce competition, not just from JD.com, but from this constant stream of new platforms that are trying to chip away at its market share. Its existing customers, it wants them to buy more from it and to buy more frequently. And then the other thing that a new brand on Tmall and all existing brands must do is maintain a high DSR score. And this is based on the product content that brands provide, the service, the customer service element, and also the delivery. Chinese consumers will really mark a brand down if it doesn't get any of those right. So I think that DSR score is out of 5, and Desiree, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think in the West, if you left a rating and review on Amazon, if you give it anything above a 4-star, that's considered as good. On Tmall, with its 5-star rating, a brand really needs to be scoring 4.8% or over out of 5 for Tmall to be happy with its performance. So yeah, the stakes have increased, and brands really need to step up and be providing value back to Tmall, rather than Tmall being the one that's providing all the value to them with its existing audience. And then onto this slide, and the main kind of brands that Tmall is looking to recruit now are for its Tmall Global platform. So it's got this stated aim that it wants to increase the amount of inbound goods that it's importing via Tmall Global by 200 billion by 2023. And if the earlier slide that showed its annual GMV is kind of 945 billion a year at the moment. So this is a substantial increase. And it's going to do that by sourcing products from more countries and really increasing the number of categories that are being sold through Tmall Global cross-border as well. So if you're not already selling into China and you want to start, I think we would all agree that Tmall Global selling cross-border is the best place to start. And once you've established yourself, then all of the extra complexity that comes with selling on the domestic marketplace, where you need local trade licenses and local entities, that can come later. Thanks.
Awesome, Joanna, there's a lot of great information here. I think the cross-border piece is really fascinating and kind of ties into one of the questions that I saw come up here as well. So I think I'll take a second and maybe Chris, push it over to you a little bit. The question is, do you see a greater percentage of counterfeits hawked on e-commerce sites in China? And if so, what strategies work to counter the negative effects?
Yeah, I think I don't know if you see more counterfeits in China. Certainly you see a lot. I think the concept of, counterfeit products has been historically problematic in China. Certainly Chinese consumers are quite cynical if certain products are real. I mean, at one point I heard someone was selling fake eggs. I don't know how you make an egg cheaper than you can lay one, but they did it. And this is kind of the inventiveness of Chinese manufacturers and Chinese business people. So I think what I would say is that Alibaba and JD have undergone a very strong movement quickly to legitimize their channel and are starting to really crack down on the sale of what is obviously fake goods. And so them being the biggest channel, I think you have some confidence that they're probably taking more action than we would see out of Amazon, although Amazon is making some good noises about this. But I think the likelihood of finding fake goods is probably the same on Tmall and JD as it would be on Amazon in the US or in Europe. If it's off channel on social media, I think this is why the importance of having good customer service and good customer service training is critical to the success of your brand, because I think Chinese consumers, at least the savvy ones, are very wary of goods. And so I think you have to be a pretty sharp operator to get away with selling fake goods for a significant amount of time in China. And so further to that, I just think they're going to tighten that up more and more as we go forward, because again, China has a reputation of having a lot of fake goods. The channels have a lot of focus on this, and Chinese consumers generally like international products. So being not made in China is a really big plus for a brand because of these reasons. So how do we tackle it? Well, I think it would be the same kind of strategies that we would use in other markets. We don't have a MAP policy in China per se, but there are the same legal routes. You can find out who's selling it. You can complain to the platform. The platform will actually take quick action on this. So I think there are some of the similar levers that we can push and pull in other markets that we have, do, and will use in China.
Yeah, and getting a lot of actually questions on this one. So I think we'll just pause here for a minute and can continue to tackle them, because I think they're really important. I think what you underscored, Chinese or American products actually have in a way, a higher chance, I guess, of succeeding unless they're counterfeit. And therefore that importance of the customer service, even if it's through WeChat, even if it's, phone call or whatever, it's like making sure that, there's a real person on the other end, making sure that you have an official, kind of store, I guess, on the platform, and people know it's kind of legit, because I think there's a lot of posers out there, even if it's, American goods that they're quote unquote counterfeiting here. So there's another question here. How do Chinese consumers trust international products sold on the global Tmall platform? Who translates the international language into Chinese on the product listing?
Yeah, well, so, I mean, for us at Pattern, that's going to be someone who works for us. And, again, it depends on how switched on a brand is. Sometimes we work with brands who have Chinese nationals working for them, or Chinese expats that have relocated to Europe or the US or wherever the product is coming from, that want to check the products and make sure that we're doing the right thing. But we have a big team that works on this. The translation of the product is sometimes not ideal, because really some things just don't translate from English to Chinese, just like they don't translate back. So what we do is transcreation. So we basically look at the content and think about how it should be presented in Chinese to make sense. So I think a lot of people have heard of broken English when they go to, when they look at Chinese signs that don't make sense in English. You got to really be careful that it translates well. So we spend an awful lot of time on getting this right, and it's really about localizing it to make sense. So for us, we do it internally, but I think that's a great question. When you're working with partners in China and you're talking about what the model is, make sure you have a handle on who's doing this, so that they don't outsource it, because that relationship could change. They could outsource it to someone who's pretty good, and then all of a sudden they could change quite quickly. So that's an important question, I think.
Yeah, cool. Let's keep going along here. There's some great questions coming up here. Here's another one. We started on Tmall's Global Early program, but realized that they don't really support marketing as originally thought. Does Pattern work with a growing brand on Tmall Global as an entry point into China?
Yeah, I mean, I think the short answer is yes, but Desiree, why don't you talk about some of the things that we've done in this space for the listeners, and maybe there's other questions that come off the back of this.
Yeah, sure. So we actually at the end of this presentation, we are also going to show you some case studies that how we bring some brands that originally they didn't have any brand awareness in China, and how we talk to Tmall for getting some more support on the traffic, and also on the support on the logistics side. Because actually for Tmall, for their internal setup, they have different targets every year. So maybe when they talk to you, I'm not when they talk to you, they might have a certain target on launching your brand and getting your brand online live on the Tmall store, and they would commit a lot on how they're going to support, and it would quite depend on how you will react and to keep up on your relationship with the category manager. Like our team, we have team based in Shanghai who are always in daily communication with the category manager on how they can enter some of the newly created sales activities on Tmall, and how they can have exclusive support on the traffic. And this kind of support would need to be negotiated by an ongoing basis. So it's the best to have a local representative of your brand based in China to have daily communication with them. Sometimes it would be a cultural problem that they really rely on the personal relationship or how you can benefit the category manager for them to grow internally. So this would be a generic answer on this question.
And Desiree as well, I think we find it's really important with these young growing brands in China to do off-platform marketing. You can't just rely on marketing on Tmall. You need to create brand awareness on other platforms as well.
Exactly. Yeah. So they Tmall also expects you are going to bring them some new customers with your brands from the off-channel marketing activities.
I think a lot of brands that go into China, again, this is going from experience. They throw a lot of money at a problem. It's not necessarily finessed. It's a bottomless pit if you're not careful with how you spend your money and you're sharp on where you spend your money. So there's a lot of different ways that, you can get pickup in China. I've seen a lot of brands go in there and use like a tier 1 or a internationally known China celebrity to hit all of China at once. What we tend to do, and those people are expensive. It'd be like getting Kim Kardashian or The Rock or someone to post something on one of the social media apps talking about your brand. It's super expensive. But what we tend to do is go to more micro influencers in certain regions. You pay them a lot less. It actually turns a much stronger ROI in terms of the output, and it actually leads to a better engagement because their fans are more glued on, more authentic than some of the big expensive influencers or KOLs as they're called in China are. And so I think it's just about the finesse and the thought that goes into how to represent your brand properly in the space without spending a huge amount of money.
All great stuff. Why don't we talk a little bit and move along here in terms of what that growth looks like and what some of these marketplaces, Tmall specifically or Alibaba Group specifically is doing to kind of continue to build. And we talk about 10% to grow, slowed to 10%, but 10% on $800 billion is pretty phenomenal.
Yeah. So on this point, I think the major piece to land is just the number of people who already buy from Taobao versus the people who don't buy from Tmall and Taobao. The Chinese market basically has 50% to go if you're looking at, attracting new customers. So if you think about this in context of, say, the US, this is like 2 United States populations still to go on the platform and participate in this. And so, when we talk about the number of users, they're adding 15 million new users added between December 2019 and March 2020, and 72 million new users added between March 2019 and March 2020. I mean, I think the key thing around here is the concept, and we haven't really talked on this, I won't spend too long because we've got a couple of the slides we want to go through here, but really this is down to the tier of the city. In China, there's tier 1 through, I don't know, tier 5, tier 6 cities. And really the tier 1, tier 2 cities is where a lot of the heavy internet penetration has gone. So tier 1 cities are places like Shanghai, Beijing, Shenzhen, Guangzhou. Tier 2 cities, some of you may heard of, some of you may not, like Suzhou, Hangzhou, Hengdu. Most people may have heard of Wuhan already, but those are all examples of tier 2 cities. And those are the people that have a high internet penetration, are the ones actively participating in these marketplaces and the ones that marketplaces really service properly. We're seeing a proliferation with some of these newer, newer services like Douyin that Desiree talked about earlier, and Pinduoduo targeting other tiered cities. So this is where the proliferation comes. And as a result, it's sort of pushed JD and Tmall to look at these other places and start servicing them a little bit better. So this is where the growth is coming from. It's not necessarily coming from the really populated or what we would consider advanced cities. It's coming from the cities that aren't as high up on the tier list and maybe more provincial capitals as opposed to what we call global cities. And keep in mind, there's over 100 cities in China that have more than 1 million people in it. So it's a big place with lots of cities.
Yeah, absolutely fascinating. Thanks for that context, Chris. I know we have a couple other questions coming in, and I'll try to get to those. I think it would make sense, though, Desiree, maybe you can walk through a little bit of the kind of seasonality or big peaks. We alluded to some of those earlier, but do you want to just walk for people who may not be as familiar with some of these and help them kind of conceptually think through what the year looks like in China from an e-commerce perspective?
Yeah, sure. So for Tmall and also on JD, the biggest event is called Double 11 or Singles Day. So it is actually in a Prime Day similar activity, selling activity on Tmall. And it is so successful that it is Tmall and JD, they want to create one more peak throughout the year. They don't want to wait for a whole year to get another peak. That's why JD created, like Joanna said earlier, JD created another activity called 618 during June, which is on 18th of June. And interestingly, Tmall actually, they followed suits of JD, and only in the second year, their sales exceed the JD platform. And 618 is so successful that this year, because of the pandemic and COVID-19 happened to create a lockdown in China in the first quarter of the year, Tmall extended the 618 events for the whole month in June. And we can see that how successful the sales performance become, because only for our brands, the brands that we're trading in China, they have 3 to 4 times increment on the sales performance during 618 versus the year before. And because of these successful stories that they keep on repeating by creating some new seasonality or some new activities throughout the year, Tmall and JD are creating some more activities like the Queen's Day. So Queen's Day is actually the International Women's Day, which is happening on 8th of March. And there's also some more activities like XX Members Day, which is on 8th of August. So the platforms are actually trying to create new peaks by highly encouraging the merchant selling on both platforms to offer discounts. And the discounts tiering would be even like an hourly basis. So people are actually, I would say that even though our Chinese team, they are saying that the government should have a public holiday on W11 because everyone is staying up to capture the deepest discount in the first hour after the midnight. So this is how the two e-commerce platforms or giants are changing the social environment in China.
Excellent, thanks so much. So we had another question come in that I think kind of leads into the next section we wanted to chat about on the marketing side. So the question is, with Tmall and Alibaba being so overcrowded, how do you stand out versus the competition? What are some of the unique things that you do that differentiate you from others? And so maybe we can go into a little bit some of the tactics that we use and then ultimately get into some of the case studies. We have about 15 minutes left. So
Okay, sure. So in China, when we help our brands to trade like Kong and Thorn, nowadays live streaming is something that we can't miss. So actually, a 3-hour time frame is the minimum time frame that we have to do live streaming on Tmall, and it is all happening within the same platform. So customers, when they watch the 3-hour live streaming, they can ask questions, interact with the host, and then they can purchase without leaving the video screen. And with our experience, because of the live streaming, we have achieved 27% daily sales uplift by doing the live streaming. And we can do it with KOL in order to attract new customer. And also you can do it with your in-house live streaming host. So that's why I would say a lot of brands in China, one of the posts that they're hiring now is a live streaming host. And except for live streaming, we can show it in the coming slide about Weitao, which is a social element within the Tmall platform. So Weitao is something like Twitter or Weibo within your store on the Tmall app. So brands could socialize with customers on the Weitao to have updates on the brands and product information. And one really good example of how our company have used Weitao is because for some for apparel brands, we see that a really popular South Korean celebrity has worn our apparel products, but because that celebrity is not our spokesperson, we couldn't talk about this celebrity officially with on our social media platform or on our store. So because a lot of customers have left the product reviews saying that, oh, this celebrity has worn these products, that's why I purchased it. And we can do the retweets on the Weitao. So a lot of customers, when they read the Weitao, they get to know more information that is actually created by genuine customers. This kind of reviews help a lot on the purchase decision making of the Chinese customers. And because of the success of the Weitao, Alibaba has created a Weitao 2.0 for some selective merchants, for them to have a even better engagement with the customers. Here you can see that there's something like a thermometer here. It actually lay out how interactive between you and the brand itself. You can increase your temperature of your account on that store by interacting more with the brands, by talking with the customer service, liking their posts on Weitao, purchasing, and with the scores increasing, you can see a personalized storefront of the products that you always browse, and also you can get exclusive customer service, exclusive benefits based on how engaged you are with the brands.
Love it.
So this is some of the new trends that we can help brands to grow within Tmall.
Yeah. So again, I think the takeaway for me, and hopefully for you in the audience as well, is, you know, if you're going to do this, you can't like half bake it. You've got to have people on the ground. You got to have people that understand the culture. You got to have people that understand the platform. You got to have relationships with these marketplaces as well. I think we're used to in China, or sorry, in the US, you know, Amazon doesn't call you back. They're super standoffish. And what I think we've seen is if you have those relationships, these marketplaces, they'll provide data, they'll provide support, they'll provide tips and interaction, but you've got to have somebody there. So again, I know we don't have a ton of time here, Chris, but I think it could be helpful to just walk through this approach of succeeding in some best practices.
Yeah, great. So, I mean, the key thing, right, is you spend a lot of time planning and then you execute. So I think a lot of the trade partners that I experienced in the years that I was in China was there was very little awareness or understanding of the actual brand. They just wanted to get a brand that could sell a lot. So, you know, when brands talk to me about having problems finding the right trade partner, it's almost like a matchmaking service, right? And a lot of these trade partners that are in China are very short term in the way that they think. So, you know, our China play is part of a global play. And so when we think about a brand, we're not just thinking about what can we make off of them in China. It's more of a long-term relationship because it's not just China focused. So when we think about a launch strategy, we're thinking about brand awareness metrics. We're thinking about how we can do things differently in China to get a better result. you get a lot of factory-like approaches in China where people are just going to do the same old thing. They're going to recommend spending money in the same old channels at the same old rate. And guess what? You're not going to get much of a difference off the back of that. So we take all those things into account. We build a growth strategy, which is around customer engagement. We make sure our DSO scores are improving. We get those customer reviews in, you know, that we share with you guys the market share data. So this is a partnership, right? So I would, whether we work together or we never work together, I think, you know, in terms of your China strategy, just make sure you're close to it, as John said, and you understand what's going on in detail in that market. And then what we're looking for is, there's a lot of talk about, can I be profitable in China? Well, I think there's very few businesses that can't be profitable, but I think it's about how realistic your growth expectations are and what you're spending your money on to get there. So we look at profitability to SKU level. You know, we look at customer demographic data to figure out how we can get better. You know, we also focus on returning customers. A lot of businesses globally are just obsessed with getting new customers and not really taking care of the customers that are already, you know, within your ecosystem. And of course, then we look at some of the metrics that matter around returns rate, markdown rate, promotional effectiveness, ROI of marketing. And I think we're really focused on these metrics to make sure that we are profitable, because when we're acquiring the product for you guys, it's part of our business as well. You know, we want to be successful with you guys. And I think if we do the right thing for the brand, you know, in the short and medium term, then we'll win as a business long term.
So what other tips, I guess, again, I know we don't have a ton more time here, but, you know, how do you find that right trade partner? We're a trade partner, we're doing this, you know, we'd love for you to come and help take you and grow in China. But even if they already have an existing one or they want to compare, what other tips do we have for people?
Yeah, so I think the most important one is, you know, do they have experience in your category? So a lot of times I've seen businesses that might be selling, I don't know, jewelry or apparel, working with a trade partner that has a specific skill set in pet category. So of course, you know, that you've got to understand how trade partners have evolved. Trade partners have often come from Tmall or JD directly, and they were category, or what we would call category or vendor managers in a specific vertical. And so then they use their contact to build up their own trade partner business to sell and trade on those, you know, sell and trade those brands. When you get outside of that category, oftentimes they just have no skill set. So they don't really understand what to do to win on jewelry and apparel if they're used to working with pets. So I think you should make sure that you ask some basic questions, ensure that they understand what you're looking for and what the strategy is, and they're aligned long-term, not just for the next year or for the next season. I think you should ensure that, you know, that they are, you know, using the correct mix of on and off platform marketing channels. A lot of them, again, as I've said before, is a very factory-like approach to how they spend money. They don't really think about it a lot. And I think you know, one of the things that we've gained a lot of traction with in China, which I think is going to some of the questions, you know, how we grow and separate ourselves from the crowd, is we really look at the wider ecosystem to think about how we can win in that space.
Excellent. So maybe the last thing before we move on to some of the case studies here is just any other, you know, again, I think you take a screenshot of this slide. I think this is fantastic. These are basically the competencies that you need to be able to trade. Anything you would add to kind of what's here, Chris?
Yeah, I would just say make sure that you understand what the capabilities of the business are that you're engaging with. So a lot of brands may not have a strong customer service team, or may not be strong in digital marketing. And I think it's really getting them to prove what the skill set is. But there is, you know, this is kind of a standard block for what we would do in any market, but it's particularly important for China just because of the distance and the difference in culture, to make sure you're understanding what's going on there. But I think what we do that's different is that we're applying a Western style trade approach. So, you know, visibility, partnership, to an Eastern style mentality where we understand what we need to win with the customers in China and Asia generally.
Excellent. Well, I want to have a chance for Desiree to review some of these, but I also want to make sure we answer some of these questions. So maybe a handful for you, Chris, before we switch over to Desiree and walk through some of these case studies here. One of the questions is, do you think your established relationship on the marketplaces in China help grow US brands more quickly?
Definitely, 100%. So you need to have connections and know the right people in Tmall. It's like anything, right? If you know the right person at Amazon, you can get things happening. If you don't have any connections there, you're in nowheresville. So we spent a lot of time cultivating relationships across the Alibaba and JD ecosystem, as well as some of the smaller marketplaces. And that has really helped our brands and our clients. It's the same thing with the kind of pull that we get with Amazon internationally because of the size of business that we are. We're not some person selling stuff out of a garage. You know, we're a very well-established and reputable business within these ecosystems. And Alibaba do engage us in a lot of different markets to help them on particular problems. And it's a relationship that goes both ways. So, you know, we've helped Alibaba grow up in certain categories over the years, and they've helped us as well.
Awesome. One other question is, we consider expansion into China. How do we see the unraveling of the US-China relations impacting logistics and supply chains and new go-to-market strategies for US products and brands? Are you anticipating changing your historic recommendations and approaches about entering these markets?
I mean, I don't think, in my mind, I don't think that the supply chains are going to change. I mean, we have a pretty diverse supply chain in ours. We can do Tmall Global or Tmall Local. I think that, you know, the one nuance of this is probably the same as Chinese brands coming to the US. I think you just got to be careful about maybe screaming too loud about where the brand's coming from. And if you're unlucky enough to be one of the brands that's in the media spotlight, like Huawei or someone else, then it becomes a bit politicized and might be challenging to sell the products or, you know, get the sales ramp. But for the average brand, I don't think we've seen any difference, you know, over the last few months. You know, if things continue to deteriorate, then of course it's a watching brief. But of course, you know, we're watching this pretty closely from our side. We're not seeing anything major happen at the moment.
Yeah, I think just to add to that, it comes back to the whole idea of face in China. And so the Chinese government in its dealings with the US government very much puts on its face, but it's not going to want to stop importing US goods because Chinese consumers want to buy them, and it needs to keep the economy going.
Yeah, good point. Okay, so Desiree, let's get into some of the fun results we've had with some of the brands we've helped launch, as well as those we've helped accelerate in China.
Yeah, sure. So this case is about Thorn, which we helped them to launch officially to enter the China market through Tmall platform. So previously, they didn't have any brand awareness in China. We couldn't see any Daigou even. So with our suitable mix of on-platform and off-platform marketing, including the live streaming, some offline PR activities, like we sponsored some charity events to have partnership with some athletes. So we successfully bring up the sales of Thorn in just in 1 year. We achieved $2 million US. And interestingly, we can see how information actually, or how JD could see how brands are growing on Tmall platform as well. Because just after 6 months after we launched the brand on Tmall, we got quite a lot of inquiries from different other platforms to invite us to launch an official store on that platform as well.
Awesome. Let's talk about another category in the pet.
Yeah, so this is one of the biggest pet manufacturer in the US. So they actually entered China for 3 years already, but their sales slowed down a bit in the past 2 years. We picked up the store earlier this year, even though during the pandemic period, we successfully increased their sales by 5 times only with 3 months, which is contributed by our social media marketing and also a B2B2C model. So a lot of resellers, they could come to our official stores to purchase the products before they sell to the end users. So this could be our other sales as well on online and offline platforms.
Awesome. Well, we always refer to the China team as our secret weapon here at Pattern, because they just absolutely go and crush it. And you know, our brands are always ecstatic about the work that they're doing. So it's fantastic. Well, I recognize we're almost out of time here. I did, for any supplement brands in the audience, I know this can be a really hard one. There's regulatory hurdles. There's a bunch of stuff here. Even on the cross-border stuff, it can be tricky. You know, we're looking for US supplement brands who want to sell products in China and putting together, you know, an actual, like a supplement store, which means that you would be selling alongside other supplements, US supplements. And we believe that this will, you know, circumvent a lot of the heavy costs. Maybe, Chris, you can talk about the costs required if you're a brand to kind of build your own store.
Yeah, so it really depends on the marketplace you're going on, but there's some heavy deposits. So it can be upwards of about 100,000 US dollars to set up on marketplaces like JD. There's fees associated with setting up a store on all those marketplaces, but outside of that, the marketing investment, for brands that are launching in the market from scratch, we can recommend anywhere between 20 to 25% of expected sales volume to be put back into marketing. For smaller brands, this can just be such an onerous cost. And so we recognize that. And the idea behind the store is to be able to set something up where, at a group level, they can take the benefits of being alongside a whole bunch of other brands, and then Pattern as a business can aggregate some of the costs so that we can wear it ourselves and help the brands grow. And eventually, when the brands get enough awareness, we can hive them off into their own brand store. But it's a really great way for smaller brands to get a foothold in China through basically our reach and our awareness program by leveraging, other parts of the brands to mitigate the cost.
Love it. So this is a personal invitation out to any of those brands. Just in terms of next steps, everyone, thank you so much for joining today. Thank you to the panelists for coming on here. We're super excited. We're very bullish on China. This is the first of a two-part series. The second series will be focused on Europe, and so we'll be sending that link out to the registration happening mid-August, I think on the 13th. And so be on the lookout for that. We would love to have you join that one as well. Some of the same team members will be on that one that know the European market very, very well as well. So for anyone interested in China, if you have any questions, additional questions, feel free to email me directly, john@pattern.com. You will also be connected, or someone may reach out and see if you have any other questions. But really appreciate everyone joining today. And like I said, the recording will be sent out. So